guys, welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I'm going to be filming a tutorial on how I create my half cut creases. So you guys know that I love my half cut creases. I do them all the time in my demos, but a lot of the times in my demos, I don't really explain what I'm doing properly. Like I explain it, but it's very vague, it's very brief, it's very short. Just because it's a demo, I just want to get it on. But in today's video, I'm going to go down to the nitty gritty. I'm going to talk about the products that I use, why I use them, the techniques that I use, and how to do them and execute them. I'm going to tell you guys about the mistakes that I've done and all that kind of stuff that I've learned over the years of doing half cut creases. I personally feel like I still have a lot of room for improvement, so I'm probably going to look back to this video in a year and be like, Judy, what are you doing? Your cut crease sucks. But we all have room for improvement, and I just want to share my tips and tricks with you guys, and hopefully it will be helpful because I feel like I have a very unique eye shape. I do have uneven eyes. One eyelid has like 3 lids and the other eye has more of like almost a hooded eye, almost a monolid, like kind of one lid. It's like a big thing that I'm dealing with here. I want to share that with you guys, and I want to encourage you guys and just tell you guys that it doesn't matter what eye shape you have, you can create any eye look on your eye shape. When I first saw cut creases on Instagram, I was like, wow, this is so beautiful. I wish I could create this on my eyes, and really glad that I don't know why I had the urge just to try it out, and I tried it, I kept practicing, and now I love it. I love this technique. It's one of my favorite eye looks of all time to do. As you guys know, I do them all the time in my demos. Even though if you have uneven eyes or monolids or hooded eyes or whatever eyelid shape you have, it's makeup. It's for you to be creative, and I hope that you guys seeing me do this will encourage you guys to create different eye looks on your eyes. Having monolids, uneven eyelids, hooded eyes is probably not the best eye shape for makeup sometimes. Like that's what I feel like. After doing cut creases, I'm like, actually having folds in my eyes and having uneven eyes, I feel like this is kind of the best eye shape to do cut creases on, because I feel like it evens out my eye shape a little bit and it makes my lid space look a bit bigger. You never know what the outcome could be. So hopefully this video will be helpful to you guys. And with that being said, enough with me rambling on. If you guys want to see how I create my half cut creases all the time, then just continue watching. Okay guys, so to get started, I already have my brows on and also some foundation on my forehead. Usually with my cut creases, I like to do my eyes first before my foundation, because usually I will be using a very shimmery shadow that has a lot of fallout. So that's why I like to do my eyes first. And when I do my eyes first, I like to have my brows on so I can kind of get the general shape of my eyeshadow. I don't like drawing on my eyebrows onto my bare skin, so that's why I have a bit of foundation just in this area here, and then my brows on ready to go. So I don't actually have my eyes primed yet or anything. I'm just gonna go very in depth in the tutorial why I do the things that I do and why I use the things that I use. So first, I am going to use the Tarte Shape Tape Concealer. This is in the shade Light Sand. You can use any concealer, I feel like. It doesn't really matter. I'm just using the Tarte Shape Tape because I just want to finish this guy up. I don't use it for my under eyes, so I use it as my eye primer. So I just like to take one stamp of concealer onto my eyes, maybe like 2, and then I'll take my beauty sponge and just blend that out all over my eyelid up to my brows. So for today's eyeshadow palette, I'll be using the Give It To Me Straight palette by Colourpop Cosmetics. This is what it looks like. It's a very pretty palette. This is my favorite Colourpop palette, to be honest. It's great for cut creases, everyday looks, going out looks. I just love this palette so much, and this is the palette that I'm going to be using today. So I'm just going to take this shade over here, which is called Matter of Fact, and I'm going to use this shade to set down that concealer. Now I know there's like a new kind of trend that's going around where people don't set their concealer down as their eye primer, but for me that probably won't work out. I'm honestly too scared to try it out. As you can see, I have so many folds in my eyes. When I look up, it's going to crease, and also I have very oily eyelids as well, so I always like to set down my concealer. I'm using my Makeup Collective number 16 brush, which is just like a large fluffy shader brush. I'm going to pat that on from my brow bone all over my lid just to set down that concealer. And just the way I think of things is like, you wouldn't put a powder bronzer right on top of your tacky foundation. You know what I mean? It's going to be patchy, but I guess people would disagree with that. You know, some people like to set eye primer down, some people don't. At this point, this is all the stuff that I do off camera before I come on camera and do my demos. I always have my eyes primed, sit down, I have my brows on with a bit of foundation. So something happened to the audio with my original clip, but I am just taking the shade Truth Hurts on my Colourpop Tapered blending brush. So first, I'm gonna put that straight into my crease. Always put most of the product in the outer corner first, and then I start putting it into the crease using windshield wiping motions and just going back and forth, really building up that color. So you gotta make sure that you are going into this inner part over here, because when you cut your crease, you want some depth to the crease. If there's no product in this inner corner area, the cut crease is not gonna really look like a cut crease. So you wanna make sure you are taking that transition shade all the way in here. And then after I have my transition shade down, I will just take a clean blending brush. This is the Wet n Wild crease brush. I'm just taking it clean, and I'm just going to go around the edges just to further blend. You just want to make sure the transition shade is really blended out, because this is going to be the base for all of the work that we put on top. So if the base looks good, everything else you put on top will look even better. And then I'm going into this shade over here, which is called BS. So I'm gonna use my Morphe M433, which is always my next brush. And I'm gonna put this right in the outer corner of my eye. So this shadow is a little bit close to our transition shade. It's probably like a couple shades darker. I feel like if you work in steps, it's gonna come out a lot nicer. I'm putting this right into my outer V of my eye with circular motions. And then I'll slowly bring it into my crease, all the way into that inner corner. Because like I said, we want that definition in that crease. It's going to pay off. The step is very important that you put all the dark shadows into that inner corner crease as well, especially when you're doing a half cut crease. So I didn't dip back into the pan. I'm just using what is ever on my brush and just working with that. Sometimes I'll go dip back in, but most of the time I'll just dip once or twice, and that will be enough product. And as you can see, they just blend into each other seamlessly just because they're very similar in shade. They're not too far off. If you're gonna go with a transition shade and the darker shade in the palette, there's not gonna be much of a transition. There's not gonna be much of a gradient between the two. It's gonna be more like a contrast, if you know what I mean. And as always, I like to go in with my Colourpop brush, which is my transition brush, and just go above that once again. Okay, and now I'm going to be taking the shade Frank on my Colourpop E9 brush, and as you can tell, as the shades go darker, I'm using smaller brushes. So I'm going to focus this shade Frank, which is like a medium brown, just right in the outer corner as well. We're doing the same kind of motions, but because this brush is smaller, it's allowing us to work in smaller areas. Not too dark, I'm not jumping too crazy high. And I feel like this palette gives you that definition that you can get. Most of the times when I'm doing cut creases, I'm using one palette. I usually would just use a transition, a medium shade, and then a dark shade. There usually isn't another medium shade for me to use. But with this palette, you do get that. So I do truly love this palette a lot. Not for just cut creases, but for multiple different looks that you can create. And then just dragging whatever is left on my brush into the inner crease portion. Going in with my Morphe M433 with the shade BS on it, just going back and building up that color again, and just to further blend anything out. Then going with my Colourpop Tapered blending brush with the shade Truth Hurts. Just going back in with my brushes from darkest to lightest again, just to build up that gradient. And I feel like with these kind of looks, you can never blend too much. And now I'm just going to take the shade actually on my Sigma, I believe this is the E30 brush. It's just the Sigma pencil brush. And doing the same thing again, but in a smaller section. So this is going to be our darkest shade. So you just want to be very careful with it, because The darker the shade is, the harder it is to blend out. So I'm just using a little bit of product on my brush and then just kind of mimicking the kind of motions that we did earlier. So focusing most of the product in the outer corner first and then bringing it into that crease. Okay, so let's kind of recap on what we have done and what we have used. So we have used 4 matte shadows so far. We haven't cut our crease yet, but we have used 4 shadows and we have used 5 brushes for the eyeshadows. So it is very simple, very minimal steps, and I feel like these brushes you guys might already have or something very similar in your collection. I typically use 4 shadows or 3 shadows. So like I said, in this palette you get 1 transition, 2 mediums and 1 dark. Usually I would just go 1 transition, 1 medium and then 1 dark, but it depends on the palette if you guys like dipping into other palettes and also how much time you have. You can go in with like 5 shadows first, because if you guys watch Jacqueline often, she likes to go in with multiple medium shades, like 1 shade darker, 1 shade darker, and really build it up, and you can see that her eyeshadow looks very, very blended. So now at this point, once I have all of my shadows on and I'm like happy with the blending, I could never be happy with the blending, honestly. I feel like I could just sit here and just like blend forever. I'm just gonna take a makeup wipe and just clean the edge and just sharpen it up. Again, if you're a beginner, this is a very helpful tip. Instead of sticking tape, I feel like it's just better to just wipe off like any mistakes. We probably will end up wiping off fallout when we put our cut crease on, but I just like to wipe off the outer edges just so I can get a general feel of how this look is turning out. Also, I want to mention like your mirror. I personally like holding a compact mirror. It's very close. You can see what you have blended, what you haven't, and it's just easier to work with than using like a big mirror. I don't know, try it. I feel like my eyeshadows blend out a lot nicer that I have a really close-up mirror because I can really see what I am doing. Okay, so now it is time to cut the crease. I like to use the e.l.f. Maximum Coverage Concealer. Again, you can use any concealer. You could even use the concealer that you use to set your eyes, but I'm just trying to finish this concealer up. I'm actually almost finished. This is the only concealer that I use right now to cut my crease. It's what I always use. So I just like to put some on the back of my hand. As you can see, there's not much left. I'm really squeezing this bottle. So the brush that I have been liking to use to cut my crease is the Vanity Planet Small Cream Shadow Brush. So these Vanity Planet brushes, you can only get it in a set, but I honestly love all of these small brushes that come in the set, and especially if you have Asian eyes, you want to use small brushes. It doesn't make sense to go in with like such a huge brush if you have like really small lids. That's more easier to create a mistake. If you go in with a smaller brush, yeah, it takes a bit longer, but it's more safer, and especially if you're a beginner, it's just a lot easier to control. I do have a discount code. It is an affiliate code, but it does save you a lot of money if you're interested in Vanity Planet brushes. I also have a discount code for these Sigma brushes, so if you guys are interested in that, I'll leave all the info down below, but this is just the brush that I like to use. Any small brush like this, I guess you could just use kind of like a lip brush, that would work as well. And since I am doing a half cut crease, I'm gonna focus this in the inner part of my crease, and I just like to paint it on, focusing most of it in that right in the inner corner, and then bring it up just kind of where I think it's going to start, just following the natural curve of my eye and of my crease. So I'm just gonna take it up to there and just kind of bring it to the middle of my lid. And the thing with this brush is that it's very flat. If you turn it to the side, it's very flat, so it's very easy to get a sharp line. I'm gonna look up, and as you can see, the concealer kind of transferred a little bit above my concealer line. So I'm gonna go above that line. Because of our Asian eyes and because we have so many folds and monolids, hooded eyes, whatever you want to call it, do look up, and you are gonna use a shimmer shadow. It's gonna go past that crease line, and once it goes past that crease line, it kind of blurs out that definition, and then it doesn't really look like a cut crease anymore. So I'm gonna go in with this very, very fine paintbrush. Just go to your local craft store and get these really tiny paintbrushes. They're very soft. They're about like $3. I have like a couple of these very fine paintbrushes that I like to use. I think they just come so handy. So I just like to take this brush with a little bit of concealer on it and then just go above that little mark that happened earlier. And you want to look down when you are cutting your crease, because if you look up, your concealer is going to keep transferring. So just look down and kind of raise your brows where your lid space will be smooth to work on. And then with my finger, I'm just gonna blend that concealer into the shadow. This is going to help make any of the shadows that we place on top just blend into the matte. There's not going to be like a harsh line where it stops. And do you guys see, because of what we did earlier, we put those dark shadows right into that crease. There is already a little bit of definition where that crease line is. If that dark shadow wasn't there and it was just our transition shade, this crease wouldn't be popping out. Because of the contrast between the cut crease and the shadow, it's dark and light, it's gonna make an illusion that's really popping out and we really just cut it, you know? So now it's for the shimmer shadow to go right on top. You don't have to use shimmer, you could use a matte, that's perfectly fine. If you're gonna use a pigment, I would recommend the NYX Pigment Primer. Place this on top of that concealer and the pigment will really grab on. So when choosing that color to go right in the inner corner, I would recommend using a very, very light shadow. So going into this palette, I'm actually gonna use Upfront because all of these shades, they're a little bit darker. If they're a bit darker and you're putting it onto that crease, like I talked about, the contrast between the matte shadow, it's going to just kind of blend into each other and the crease is not gonna pop out. So you really wanna use a really, really light shimmer shadow. There are times where I have used more of a darker shimmer shadow and it doesn't look as good. It doesn't really look like a cut crease. So you really want to use a really light shadow. If you guys have some spare time, see how it looks. It makes a huge difference. So I'm going to take that shade Upfront on my Makeup Collective number 18 brush. This is my shimmer shadow brush. And I'm actually going to wet my brush and just taking that shade Upfront. This is going just right on top of that concealer. Just gonna pack it on, and you want to make sure you go underneath that concealer. You're not going above that crease line. If you need to use a smaller brush, use a smaller brush, which I probably will, just so I can get up to that crease line. I don't want to go above it. So for my smaller brush, I'll be using the Makeup Collective number 4 brush, which is just, I think, a lip brush, but it's very fine and thin. And it's gonna help me go right up to that crease. And bada bing, we have that lid shade on, and this shade as well. I don't think I've ever used this shade before. And you're just gonna take whatever's left on your brush and just kind of blend it in the middle. We will fix that very soon as well. And also another thing with cut creases, you wanna make sure you are just working on one eye first and then the other eye, because if you leave the concealer on too long, it's gonna start creasing and it's gonna lose its tackiness, and you wanna keep that tackiness. And as you notice, I didn't set that concealer down because I want the metallic shadow just to like really, really grab on. I'm gonna go back in with my Morphe M433 and the shade BS, which is our number 2 shade. And I'm gonna use this to mesh the matte shadow and the dark shadow together. I'm just gonna press right in the middle where they meet, just right here, just dabbing it on. I'm not swirling, I'm not doing anything, just meshing the two together by stamping. And this is going to give that soft blend and add a bit of color. Okay, now I'm going to take one of my other paint brushes. This is a very, very small brush. I'm going to take the shade Actually, which is the darkest shade that we use. And I'm taking some on my brush and I'm just going to wipe the majority of the product on the back of my hand because it's very, very dark. I'm gonna start from here, the outer corner is, because that's where most of the product is gonna go, and then just take it into that crease. That crease line. You just want to define that crease line a little bit. Okay, so that is it for this eye for now. I'm gonna go off camera and cut the crease on this eye, and then we'll be right back to finish off the eye look. Ta-da! So that is both eyes done. I just feel like half cut creases look so good on Asian eyes. They just make your eyelids look a little bit bigger. And I want to quickly say that this cut crease is a little bit higher just because this eye is a lot bigger than this eye. As you can see, this eye I only have one lid, but on this eye I have like multiple, so I had to take it a little bit higher. If I could give another advice, I just did it out of habit, but if you have uneven eyelids like me, I'd recommend that you do the bigger eye first. That way you can match this eye with how high this eye is and make it a little bit more even. But if I just go like this, you probably can't tell that it's too uneven. I feel like it's just like a little bit higher. So I'm just going to clean up my under eyes a little bit from any of that glitter that we just used. There's not too much, honestly. Okay, so now that the cut crease action is kind of done, I guess that's like the hard part. Now it is time to give yourself a wing liner. I feel like with a half cut crease, it looks really nice with a wing liner. I know not everybody likes to do a wing liner, but I do. I always do it, whether it's a cut crease or any day of my life, I will do a wing liner. Gel liner that I like to use is the Inglot AMC 77 gel liner. Since this is so dramatic, it's good to do more of a dramatic wing as well. And the brush that I'm using is the Makeup Geek bent eyeliner brush. Okay, so now we are moving on to the lower lash line. I'm gonna take the shade BS on my Sigma E55. This is that medium shade that we were using. And this shadow is going to match the transition shade that we placed on top, and it's just gonna bring the whole look together, making it look very cohesive. And then I'll be using the shade Actually on my Sigma short shader brush, which is the E20 brush. And I'm gonna press this against my lower lash line. And I'm just gonna use the Ardency in Modster Smooth Rise Super Gel Eyeliner in the shade Coffee. And I'm just gonna line my bottom waterline with this. So pretty much now I have my whole face on, and before I wrap everything up, I just want to mention about lashes. So the lashes that I'm wearing are the Iconic Lights from House of Lashes. They are just more shorter towards the inner corner and longer towards the outer corner, and these are the kind of lashes that you would want to wear when you are doing a half cut crease. That way they are not covering all the hard work that you did. If they were to be long all around, right into the inner corner, it's going to cover that, and we didn't do all this hard work for nothing. Another good lash from House of Lashes is the Serene Light. These are the two lashes that I typically wear when I do a half cut crease. But before we wrap up and I show you guys the final look, I'm going to highlight my brow bone and also my inner corner. So usually I will just match it with the shade that I used in my inner corner if it is like a wearable shade to put in your brow bone. You know, if it's like a light blue, then obviously I'm not going to put that in my brow bone, but I'm just going to take that same shade up front with the Vanity Planet Rounded Liner Brush. Another great brush from the Vanity Planet brush set. So I just highlight my brow bone and also my inner corner, kind of connecting it with the cut crease a little. So this, guys, is the completed look. This is how I achieve my half cut creases all the time. This is what I use and how I do it and why I use it. So hopefully you guys did find this video helpful. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up for me and comment down below your thoughts. If you guys ever recreate a half cut crease inspired by me, or if you guys are gonna follow this tutorial and do a half cut crease for the first time, it would mean so much to me if you could tag me on Instagram Instagram or something, I would love to see it. I love seeing your recreations. Every time you guys tag me on something on Instagram, it just makes my heart feel so warm that you guys follow my tutorial and I'm helping someone out there with all these videos. So yeah, if you guys ever recreate anything, be sure to tag me. I would love to give it a like, show you some love. But that is it for today's video. It was very in-depth. I'm just gonna wrap it up here. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!